Hi everybody, John McTighe with Riptide Press. Today I'm going to show you why we need to rethink the B2B customer journey and how that can help us accelerate business growth. Here we have the classic inbound methodology, brought to you by HubSpot, of course. This is the classic view that marketers look at when they're thinking about the buyer journey or the customer journey. It starts with attract, which sort of corresponds to the awareness stage in the classic sales funnel, where we take strangers and convert them hopefully to both visitors and then leads through a conversion process, and then ultimately close them as customers and delight them as existing customers to become advocates or promoters. So this is one view of the customer journey that most of us are used to looking at. Next, we'll take a look at more of a classic view from a sales point of view. Again, awareness, sort of the top of the sales funnel, consideration when buyers are thinking about buying from you, making a decision, and ultimately becoming a customer, which corresponds to various stages of the journey as we define it: visiting, lead, becoming a marketing qualified lead, a sales qualified lead, an opportunity, and a customer. So again, this is a perspective that a salesperson might have looking at a potential buyer as they travel through your website, for example, and convert on various offers, and various engagements happen through phone calls or whatever. So this is more of a sales perspective. Now, more recently, we've been thinking about more like a flywheel in which customers are in the center, and maybe the journey starts with marketing and migrates to sales through the conversion process, and then ultimately through service to satisfy the needs of the customer, and then maybe they buy again or they learn about new products, new cross-sells, new upsells, and they go back through marketing, through sales again. So it's sort of a never-ending cycle, which is a good thing if it works. But again, it's our view of the customer journey. It doesn't really necessarily have anything to do with what really happens. And let me show you what that looks like. So this is more of a complex view of the customer journey. And it might really start more with curiosity on the left-hand side. So imagine yourself as a buyer, and you become aware of certain things. So this is kind of the awareness stage. You're curious about maybe there's some new issue or some problem that exists in the industry that people are talking about or writing about. So you might read some journals, you might get an email newsletter from peers or possibly from vendors, and you might see those articles via email, through social media. You might get an ad or two through videos that are published, audio podcasts, or you might go to a trade show, or maybe a peer or a friend tells you about something through word of mouth. So all of those things move through the cycle as what I'd call an inbox or feed. So you actually store these things, you look at them later. Maybe 95% of those are thrown away usually, so that might lead 5% that are of interest. And these numbers aren't hard and fast. They're just basically guesses, but it's gonna vary from person to person and industry to industry, and that's kind of the point. People have a different way of taking in information from the various channels that are shown there under publishers. Or if they really they think they have a problem, an issue, they might do a search through Google, through social, through voice, or through word of mouth. They might actually be actively looking for some kind of solution that would come through their through live engagement with people or through their display devices. Moving to the next stage, maybe they've saved a short list of things that they're interested in their bookmarks or through saved social media posts, and they read those and review them. Most of those probably don't really make the cut. So 80% of those maybe get thrown away as well. Same with searches. Another, not a lot of those things will fit exactly what the person is looking for. So, we're narrowing down the field here quite a bit of all the stuff that someone looks at, 5% and then 20% of that. And then maybe you start to get more interested. So you do a little more research. You do a little more focused search, or you ask more questions, or you dig around through social media looking for things. And you're becoming more and more interested. You're gaining more insights as you go. You're learning as you go. And so maybe at some point it's time to engage with the brand. You find something that's really interesting, so you want to find out more about that brand. So that leads us to the next page, which would be the engagement part of the process. This, in the classic funnel, might be corresponding to the consideration phase. But I've broken this down into different types of engagement: passive, active, and interested. So passive, you might read it, watch it, click a like, maybe do a share. Paid ads the same way. You might click through, read it. Again, most of those things are probably going in the trash. Same with email, same with chat. In chat, you might be a little more interactive. So you might ask a question. You might set up a meeting. Of course, that would be at the interested end of the scale. Same with a website. You'd browse first, read some pages, maybe go do something else, maybe bookmark it. But as you move a little more, you gain a little more insight. You're a little more interested as you go. You might share your social media posts, and then you might follow the brand. Or you might do a little more research from the website and click on a contact us page or schedule a demonstration. Same with chat. You might go back and forth with either the other person or the artificial intelligence on the other end, and get some of your questions answered. So you might want to schedule another meeting or demonstration. So all of these things through time lead to ultimately a deeper engagement where you're actually planning to talk to somebody that works for the brand. And then things get even more complicated in the B2B cycle. So if you're B2C, if you're a consumer, you might elect at this point to buy something through e-commerce. You might do some more research. You might do some more comparison shopping. But on the B2B side, things get a lot more complicated typically, especially with more expensive things for sale. So you might reach out and touch the champion of the buyer. So the buyer has someone who's just gone through that research process and understands the problem maybe a little bit, is at least aware of it. And they're going to start looking through more detail. They're going to identify the problem that can be solved. And maybe that's been sort of boiling up through the research process. But at that point, the problem is identified. They might share it with other people in the company. At that point, things might get a little more formalized. So there might be a committee put together. There might be more than one person talking about the impact of buying something or making some sort of proposal to solve a problem. So that would be a discussion. Ultimately, the committee would be responsible for analyzing the pros and cons of the solution to the problem, the different vendors, and maybe ultimately they reach a consensus. So that's prior to a decision. So both the problem and the solution would go through this process with multiple people at different stages. And then at some point, there has to be buy-in. There has to be a plan. There has to be an idea that people agree on so that there's some momentum going forward, that someone who is in a more of a decision-making position would say, okay, yeah, I buy in with that. And at that point, you're talking about budget and approval would be at the end of that process. So that could take multiple people as well. And then you're not finished. You still have to have a plan in place for buying, implementing, delivering, setting up, testing, all those sorts of things, and all the different people that are involved, the timing, and all of that needs to be set up before any sort of purchase. So as you can see, the entire sort of decision-making process, the consideration stage is quite complicated in B2B, and we often miss that in both sales and marketing. So there are multiple people involved here, and there are multiple stages, multiple points of consideration along the path. And each one of these should be considered in a proper sales and marketing approach. So finally, we're at the end of the game, so to speak. So the customer, the decision's been made, we've purchased the item, and now it's still not over. The customer journey is really kind of just beginning. So the owner, the person who made that, who was the champion before, but now kind of owns the project, and the different stages there would be to roll that out to the team that's going to be utilizing the product, whatever it is, and then whoever's responsible for managing it, making sure that things are working well, doing the analytics. So this again is multiple stages, multiple people receiving the goods, installing them, training the people that are involved, doing the testing and doing reporting to management. So at the implementation stage, the integration stage, support when things don't go right, or maybe they do and you do need to do some upgrades. There are multiple stages along the way as well. And then ultimately evaluating the success of the project and implementing the product that was purchased, generating the results, doing the analysis, creating reports, open discussion, and then a decision to upgrade. So that's where that flywheel part comes around, and now you're going back into the sales and marketing process again. So my point here is that the B2B customer journey is really quite complex. It has multiple touch points, multiple channels, multiple people involved, and each one of these is an opportunity for sales and marketing to intervene in some way, to provide content, for example, or to discuss issues about different people who have different needs. Say, for example, the safety person involved would have completely different objections or considerations than someone who's more interested in productivity or budget or implementation. So each one of these stakeholders would probably need to have a different conversation with your sales and marketing team. Maybe you could do that all in one meeting, but all of these things are opportunities for convincing the buyer, the customer, not only to purchase your product, but to stay with it and upgrade and continue the buyer engagement. So as you can see, the B2B customer journey is far more complex than our classic funnel, flywheel, or cyclone models. And that's because we look at it through a sales and marketing lens, not through the eyes of our customers. If we take the time to listen to our customers, work with them to find out how they buy and what works or doesn't work for them, we can build a much more realistic model. And that affords us all kinds of opportunities for successful engagement and building trust. which are the foundations of customer loyalty and sustained revenue growth. Thanks for joining me today, and please add your comments and suggestions below.